Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Criminal Justice Organization and Administration. We're going to be covering Chapter 2 today, and Chapter 2 is going to focus on management and supervision. So management is there to direct and control using the resources of the organization to meet the goals and the mission of the organization. I want to contrast that with supervision, which is going to be the people who oversee the day-to-day work and make sure that the activities are being successfully implemented and executed to meet those goals. So there's a difference between management and supervision. But I want to talk about different approaches to management. And we're going to start with seagull management. And this is going to be, think of a seagull, how they sort of dart in when they see food and dart out, and they're just like sort of all over the place. Supervisors who are seagull managers here when something is wrong, they fly in, they dart in, they hover over everybody, and then they basically, crap all over it, throw down their, directive, and then fly away and leave the fallout to fall where it does with among the line staff. So that's not a good approach to management. And we're going to talk about micromanagement later on. That is a facet of micromanagement. Micromanagement is never good. Nobody likes it, but we're gonna talk about that more later. Um, Characteristics of effective managers. Well, first of all, there has to be self-confidence. So if you're a manager and your self-confidence is lacking, you don't believe that, you can get the job done. What makes you think that your subordinates will be able to think that they can get the job done if you don't have confidence in your organization, in the mission, in the goals of your organization? That will come through and it will undermine your personnel. It will undermine them. A good attitude is also really important, right? And an individual's attitude towards how they manage needs to be positive. It needs to be focused on mission and goals. If you aren't focused, if you are unhappy with your job, if you're unhappy with the organization, again, that's going to come through and it's going to undermine the rank and file. But let's talk about different types of management. So when you're doing your final project for this class and you're building your own organization on paper, you're going to want to determine what type of management am I going to use. So first we're going to talk about management by objective. So this is when management and subordinates together engage. They set goals together. They track performance to see, are those goals being met? So it's very group oriented. There's input from the top, there's input from the bottom, and they are all working together. There's also total quality management, which systematically identifies the defects in the process of achieving organizational goals. You analyze the cause of those defects, and then you correct them. And then you evaluate, did the corrections work? Okay, so that's total quality management. We talked about micromanagement a little bit before. Let me start out by saying don't do it. It doesn't matter where you go to work ever in the world. Nobody likes a micromanager. Micromanagement undermines people's productivity. It undermines their work satisfaction. Unhappy workers do not produce good work. And micromanagers are people who are just constantly hovering and suffocating their workers. And, they don't let their workers be independent, autonomous adults, able to make decisions and execute their duties. They feel that no matter who's doing the work and what the work is, they have to, nope, do it this way, nope, do it that way, nope, I don't like the way you did it, even if the outcome is completely the same, right? This actually decreases productivity in a big way. So you never want to be a micromanager. Micromanagers are overly critical, and they rarely provide positive feedback, and it really irritates people, right? So avoid micromanagement. So let's talk about management levels in law enforcement. So on the first line, we're going to have our sergeant and our first line supervisors. At the middle level, we're going to have captains and lieutenants. And at the top level, we're going to have the chief or the sheriff, depending on what the organization is. Regardless of what level of leadership there is, all of these positions revolve around planning, organizing, controlling, and leading. So first line supervisors are going to oversee the day-to-day concerns of rank and file, the officers that are actually out there executing the job, dealing with community members, dealing face-to-face with crime victims, etc. The sergeant is often promoted from the rank and file and becomes the person who's in charge of rank and file. Remember, we have our pyramid hierarchy. We've got first line down here, and sergeant is going to be next here, and up and up and up until we get to the chief at the top of the hierarchy. Sergeant can be a tricky position because for a long time you were a part of the rank and file. right? Now you're in charge of the rank and file. So you went from being just, one in the line of brotherhood and sisterhood of policing to being a little bit of the boss man or the boss woman, right? Which means you have to deal with complaints, you have to deal with conflicts. And it's very difficult to go in many cases from being a part of that rank and file and having all of those friendships, being everybody's buddy, to being the disciplinarian, to being the person who has to say yes or no to things that people don't want to hear yes or no to. So there's a lot of challenges that can come with that promotion out of rank and file. Let's talk about middle management a little bit. Captains have authority over all law enforcement officers, and they only answer to the chief or the sheriff, depending on how the organization is organized. So if we have that pyramid, that top triangle is going to be the chief, the one right below it's going to be the captain. Lieutenants are second in command to captains, and they are in charge of all of the sergeants. And the LT, which is short for lieutenant, is going to report back to the captain. So again, we have that bottom up chain of command and authority. Both captains and lieutenants are going to oversee promotions, demotions, terminations when necessary, managing work schedules, overseeing and maintaining records, equipment, budgeting, etc. So that's a very big shift from being a member of line personnel to a member of upper level administration and dealing with a lot of the organization's administrative functions. The executive manager of any law enforcement organization is going to be, the CEO of the company, so to speak. So this is going to be your chief of police. This is in prisons. This is going to be your warden, right? This is depending on what it is. You're going to be the deputy, deputy chief. This is a very political role. And this is the person who will often be seen as the face of the organization for better and for worse. So when the organization is thriving and getting a lot of positive feedback and a lot of community support, this is the person who gets to sort of bask in the sunlight. But conversely, when there's any kind of problem in the agency, any kind of lawsuit, when there are tensions between the community and this agency, this is also going to be the fall guy who takes all the criticism. And this is where the buck is going to stop. That this is your agency, so why is it malfunctioning? Why does the community not trust this agency or engage with this agency? So it's very political. They do a lot of PR on the agency's behalf, but they are also in the position where they formulate the objectives and the goals of the agency. They also develop long and short-term plans for the organization overall. This is going to set the tone for the entire organization. So again, we get back to that attitude, the importance of attitude, positivity, etc. If you have a competent, confident, positive individual at the top of that hierarchy, it sets a good tone for the organization. And conversely, if you don't have those things, it does not set a good tone for the organization. So law enforcement managers have to be a lot of things. They have to wear a lot of different hats. And the first one is going to be a planner. So law enforcement managers are always setting goals and objectives to meet the mission statement of the organization. They're also going to be facilitators. So they're going to assist others in performing their duties by providing communication, direction, support to the staff. So if the line staff are like, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z, but we don't have the equipment that we need to do it safely, this is where the facilitation hat is going to be put on and say, okay, what equipment do you guys need? And let me see if I can, provide it for you so you can do your job. Interfacer is another hat, and this is going to be somebody who communicates with all segments of the agency. So they have to have a very intimate working knowledge of who's in what role, what does that role fill, what's the purpose of each role, and how does each role and each individual in that position meet the overall organization's objectives. Finally, we're going to have interactors, and these are individuals that have to be able to work interactively with multiple groups. So law enforcement engages with a lot of different groups. They engage with the community. They engage with school districts. They engage with the press. They engage with other law enforcement agencies. And you have to be able to do that successfully. Interagency communication is often very difficult. They're due to a lot of reasons, whether people are unhappy with your organization or they feel that your organization in the past has not been cooperative with their organization. There can be a lot of obstacles to navigate in the interactor position. So let's talk about different kinds of leadership. We're going to start with situational leadership. And situational leadership is going to provide support and direction to workers that the workers need in order to execute their jobs. Transformational leadership treats employees as the most valuable asset of the organization, right? That literally the employees are the ones executing the day-to-day activities that are attempting to meet the goals and the mission of the organization. So we want to make the best contribution best possible contribution to the ability of them to do their job. Autocratic leadership. This is going to be managers who make decisions with no input from workers, and that there's going to be very little concern and very little engagement from management to subordinates. This is not a popular method of management, but it is a method that's actively out there in law enforcement, where the brass at the top calls the shots, and it doesn't matter with the subordinates at the bottom or in between. If they agree, if they disagree, if they think it's going to work or not work, doesn't matter. That's autocratic leadership. Democratic managers focus on the interest of their subordinates. So they want to know, with their line workers, their day-to-day patrol officers, what are you struggling with? What are you having a hard time with on the job? Are you having a hard time, mentally, emotionally, physically? What do you need, right? So that's democratic managers. The final type of management or leadership that we're going to talk about is laissez-faire leadership. And laissez-faire is an economic term. And this is leadership that literally just stays out of the process, just stays out, hands off, and allows the organization to run unimpeded. The thought process here is that the people who work here are independent, autonomous adults. We hired them for their abilities. And they will be more functional if we just keep our hands off at the organization or the administrative level. This is the exact opposite of micromanagement. I think there is a lot of value to this approach, but there are also a lot of potential negative downfalls as well.